in Iran, real attacks are coming in, terrorist attacks. A terrorist bombing 48 hours ago claimed the lives of well over 100 people. Close to 300 were injured. This was at a family-oriented pilgrimage to the grave site of Major General Qassem Soleimani, the former leader of the IRGC, whose presence is felt in a very powerful way right now. And we want to bring in our guest, Setareh Sadeghi. How are you doing, Setareh?
I'm pretty good.
Good. I know
As
it's
good as
late
I
there where
can
you
be.
are. You're in. Well, tell us where you are and just introduce yourself to our audience, because I think you'll do it better than I can.
Sure. So my name is Setareh Sadeghi, and I'm currently based in Isfahan. That's where I was born and raised, and I'm a PhD in American Studies. I've worked as a freelance journalist and translator, and I'm also a teacher. I teach about U.S. politics at university here with students, like university students here.
Well, we're grateful for the work you're doing and for all the contributions you've made to the Grayzone. This terrorist bombing in Kerman took place amid a wave of assassinations, a U.S. assassination of an Iraqi militia leader in Baghdad, an Israeli assassination of a Hamas political leader and lead negotiator with Israel, Salah Arori, in southern Beirut. Um, and I incorrectly stated that you were in Kerman during this bombing, but you had friends there. You've talked to eyewitnesses. So tell us what you've learned about this.
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah, so you know that General Soleimani was very, very popular among Iranians, and his funeral back 4 years ago was reportedly the biggest funeral ever recorded in history, and the images show that like it was on different international channels, and huge crowds that came out in different cities showed how popular he was with the vast majority of Iranians. And this annual commemoration for him has been going on for 4 years this year. And I was actually thinking of joining my friends who were going there, but I had to attend a few work things here, so I couldn't. I talked to my friends who were there, heard the explosion, but they were not in the vicinity of where what exactly happened. But I also talked to like friends of friends who were in near where the terrorist attack happened. And as you said, it's like a family-oriented pilgrimage, and people go with their children. Actually, more than I think 53 or more than that of the martyrs so far have been women. 30 of them, if not more, were under 18 years old, and you will have like 2 year old babies among the victims. So it's very tragic. And I remember like I was just I wanted to make sure that my friends were okay, and I messaged them, and I went also on social media to check what people are posting, and some of the friends or people that I was following were saying that they were okay, but they were near the incidents. And some people even witnessed like baby girls with their heads burned, and or uh, if I think you have also seen that initially the numbers were reported as higher, but then they were adjusted, which was because there were so many body parts, and uh, it was very difficult. I mean, they were rapidly trying to, count the dead bodies and and take care of everything that was happening. So it's been very tragic. But the interesting thing is also that exactly the next day, which was yesterday, there were even more and larger number of people coming to the site where the terrorist attack happened to show that they're loyal to General Soleimani, and that these attacks are not going to push them back from defending what they believe in, from their values. And they also wanted to obviously attend the funeral for some of the martyrs. There were also 13 martyrs who were not Iranian, most of them Afghan refugees that were attending the event, and they were killed in the terrorist attack.
So who do you think is responsible? We've seen if the Islamic State claim responsibility. This is from the video in which they claimed responsibility. It's a very unusual looking video because, as we know
Exactly.
from the Iraqi and Syrian experience, when there was a terrorist bombing or a suicide bombing by ISIS, they would show the face of the perpetrator
Exactly.
after he died. They, would honor him essentially. But here they're wearing masks. There have been arrests in Kerman of the supposed attack team and collaborators. One is from Tajikistan. But the MEK is People's MEK, which is backed by Saudi Arabia and Israel. They often carry out terrorist attacks inside Iran as well. So what's going on here?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, everyone is talking about how unusual this statement by this ISIS is because, um, as you said, not only they honored them, sometimes even you would see a video of the perpetrators, like they would make a statement before going on the operation, like taking pride in what they're doing. But this time we're seeing that their faces are covered, which is very unusual, and it also somehow took them a longer time than usual to announce that, or to take credit for the terrorist attack. Even before the ISIS announces or takes credit for the terrorist attack, everyone was talking about how it is either, I mean, the operation is carried out either by ISIS, MEK, or directly from Israel. But in all the three cases, I would say, who is behind them, like who has trained and funded MEK, who has trained and funded ISIS, and who is funding the ongoing genocide and all the crimes and the occupation of Palestine by Israel. It has always been the US, and Iranians know that very well. MEK is one example. They are a very notorious and rejected by all Iranians, a terrorist group, and they used to be on US and EU's list of terrorist organizations. Even when they were on the list of terrorist organization, as Simon Hirsch wrote about it back many years ago, they were trained in Nevada during Bush administration by Mossad and CIA to carry out assassination of Iranian nuclear scientists inside Iran. So these kinds of assassinations and terror attacks were also something that people were expect from the MEK, because the MEK has also previously carried terrorist bombings inside the shrines. As I remember when I was probably a teenager or something, that a lot of people died in the shrine in Mashhad because MEK carried out a terrorist bombing. But the thing is, uh, whichever of these, like the MEK or ISIS, carried out the operation itself, it doesn't look like this is coming. I mean, like the masterminds behind both terrorist organizations have always been the US and Israel. And this is something that Iranians know very well. Even though the US and like spokespersons from the US government try to say that we have nothing to do with this, but Iranians remember the 1953 coup. They remember how the US supported Saddam in its eight-year war on Iran, how they funded MEK. And people can also read your book, Max, about management of savagery and how ISIS and other terrorist organizations have been created by the U.S. government and funded. And so it doesn't make the U.S. innocent in any ways. And that's how the majority of Iranians are looking at the thing.
And we have the last sort of ISIS terror attack on Iran that I can remember in 2017. Some gunmen ran up in the Iranian parliament in Tehran and just massacred people. And Donald Trump came out and essentially endorsed this attack, endorsed ISIS, and said those who commit terror will essentially get what they bargained for, almost implying a
Yeah,
U.S. hand
exactly.
in that attack. We also have the Mossad chief, David Barnea, stating on the day of this attack that those who took place in October 7th will sign their own death warrant. Okay, we've heard that before from many Israeli officials, but he actually stated at the funeral of the Mossad's founder, Zvi Zamir, one of their founders, that he is going to continue Zamir's hunt for the 1972 perpetrators of the attack on Israel's Olympic team at the Munich Olympics, which led to this war of the spooks in the 1970s, bloodshed across Europe. It looked like, by the way, the Mossad was using, at that time, their version of ISIS was Abu Nidal, who is a supposed Palestinian militant, but the only attacks he carried out were on the PLO, on the PFLP, on Palestinian interests. So every Palestinian understood Abu Nidal to be basically an Israeli agent or a double agent. And so we're seeing these kinds of attacks all over again. It looks like Israel wants to destabilize not just the region, but this could go to Europe as well. Who knows? To Latin America, even to here. I want to ask you, because we got to kind of we've got to move on to a lot of topics, but I want to ask you, Qassem Soleimani's successor, Hossein Salami, the head of the IRGC, has vowed revenge. You can see right to the left, or maybe it's, to my left of this headline, the Israeli Defense Minister, Yoav Gallant, declaring time running out for diplomatic solution to Hezbollah tensions, meaning Israel is likely to escalate with Hezbollah after this attack in Beirut. How do you think Iran is likely to respond here? And how do you think Iran's allies, for example, in Hezbollah, might respond?
Well, it looks, I mean, it definitely is clear that Israel is looking for more attention and for getting Iran and other the resistant groups in the region, in Iraq and in Lebanon, involved in various, sorts of attacks, so that they cannot have a more concentrated like response towards Israel, and Israel wants to have the U.S. involved in all these tensions, so they have some military backing, because they cannot. We're seeing that this is basically because they're feeling that they're losing the war against Hamas and against Palestinians. I'm sure there will be some sort of response by Iran and Hezbollah, because the resistant figures are being killed in Iraq and in Lebanon, and innocent people have been killed inside. In Lebanon and Iraq, and inside Iran, innocent people have been killed. And it depends, like how the response will depend on the more details, the intelligence details that will come out. Because so far, at least 9 people have been arrested, and Iran is still working on the details of who has been, behind the attacks and where they're getting their information from and everything. And as you mentioned, ISIS also last year carried out 2 other terrorist attacks inside Iran, inside a shrine, at the peak of the unrest that were also part of Israeli and U.S. Intelligence operations inside Iran. MEK had a major role in what happened last year, and something around 60 police officers and security forces in Iran were killed. And Bolton was bragging about how they managed to get the arms to the so-called protesters. So Iran has been waiting for the time to respond to all of that, and the public opinion in Iran really demands a strong response by Iran, but also a response that is strategically wise and gets the results that the people and the Iranian government wants.
Just one last question. This attack came at a march commemorating the assassination of General Soleimani. And I'm wondering if you could talk briefly about why he's revered so strongly inside Iran, and I'm wondering if you could respond to the process to how he's characterized in the U.S. So, a standard account, like in the New York Times, reporting on this attack, on this march, says that Soleimani is regarded in the West as a malign actor. And then it talks about how, yes, he did play a role in defeating ISIS inside Iran, inside Iraq and Syria. But the Times says he did that alongside a U.S.-led coalition. So that basically the Times is trying to say that the defeat of ISIS was done by the U.S., this U.S.-led coalition, and Soleimani. Yes, he played some role, but the main actors here in defeating ISIS were the U.S.
Yeah. Yeah, like we remember the accidentally dropping of the weapons for the terrorists like ISIS in Iraq and Syria by the US. And I mean, the US was so obsessed with getting rid of Assad that they did not really care about who they're aligned with and who they're armed. And just wanted the Syrian government to be removed because they were not doing what the U.S. wanted. But inside Iran, Qassem Soleimani has been respected and admired for not only the fight against terrorism and against ISIS, but also the fight against Saddam Hussein. He was a key figure in the during the like Iran's defense against Saddam's invasion, and he has been a big part of all Iran's defense strategies for many years. And people know that he has dedicated his life and his, he has sacrificed everything he had to protect the country and protect the Iranian people from any invasion. And he was, aside from or besides his military, I would say, capabilities, he was also a very modest man. He was very, people oriented. He was very humble. He interacted with people. He checked on the families of the martyrs very often, and they called him uncle, and he was very soft spoken as like a family man. So the image that Iranians have of him is like they look at him as an uncle who protected them, who defeated not only ISIS but also Saddam, and he was the mastermind behind all Iran's capability to deter the attacks. And you know that Iran has always been under, ever since we had the revolution, we have been under threats from Israel, from the Ba'ath regime and the Saddam regime from the U.S. And of course, Saddam's invasion of Iran was totally backed and funded by the U.S. and a few European countries. So this is how we remember Qassem Soleimani. And there are a lot of people who are taking pride in wanting to be a follower of him and just follow his cause. That's how we remember him.
Yeah, and Eric Thomas, who's helping us out from behind the scenes, made a great comment. Imagine how the U.S. would react if some foreign adversary did this to them. There is no general or military figure as revered as Soleimani was in Iran in the U.S. But just imagine if that took place, what the U.S. response would be. And we've seen nothing but strategic patience from Iran. But I think other than the attack on the Al-Assad air base in Iraq, in which the U.S. seems to have been notified a little bit ahead of time, there were no U.S. casualties. There were head injuries, but we haven't seen Iran's full capacity. And going back to my previous comment about the 1970s, the War of the Spooks, based on what Israel's been doing and its announced intention to kill political figures around the world, this opens them up to the same possibility. Obviously, reciprocity is real. So we will be continuing to follow that. And Setareh Sadeghi, thank you for joining us from Iran. scholar, journalist, and translator and contributor to the Grayzone. We'll continue to have you back because I think this story is going to be just as relevant next week or in the coming few days.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Max and Aaron. It was nice talking to you, and I look forward to seeing you both again.